The New York Knicks have interest in multiple players, including Bruce Brown and PJ Washington, and we have to talk about this because this is obviously huge news with the NBA trade deadline just being a few days away now. This video will be coming out on Monday, February 5th. The trade deadline is in 3 days from now on February 8th, so this is obviously a very exciting time to be an NBA fan and a Knicks fan, as it's almost certain that they'll make some trade involving Evan Fournier's contract. As Darielle and I have said multiple times, free the boy Evan. He deserves to play somewhere, just not on the New York Knicks. He does not fit here. But as Jake Fischer and Bleacher Report have informed us, as the trade deadline quickly approaches, the New York Knicks have reportedly had their eyes on multiple players around the league, and what Fischer had to say is they've shown legitimate interest in Hornets forward PJ Washington, and they appear even more interested in Toronto Raptors guard Bruce Brown Jr. Now, obviously, we've talked about Bruce Brown a little bit here, how he's already basically marketed himself to play for the team after saying he's the perfect type of player for Tom Thibodeau, and how also he mentioned he loved living in New York after he initially didn't like the city, but then played for the Nets and his tune changed, and that he loves coming back to New York. And the Knicks have made a trade with the Raptors before, so there's obviously a legitimate chance that the Knicks could trade for Bruce Brown. I just don't expect them to, because Bruce Brown, as it said there, he's a guard. First of all, yeah, he's the size of a guard, but he's more of the position of winner, the same thing that Josh Hart is, as Steve Kerr coined. And I don't think the Knicks need another Josh Hart, and I've talked about that enough that that's really all that I have to say on the Bruce Brown topic, outside of just that the Raptors are believed to be seeking some return in the range of a first-round pick in exchange for Brown, who was acquired from the Pacers as part of the Siakam trade. I think a lot of teams could trade a first-round pick for Bruce Brown. It would make a ton of sense and be a good move. The Knicks are just not one of them. They have Josh Hart, who's basically the same player. We don't need the overlap. We need shot creation off the bench or just some shooting. Get some more shooting on that bench. Don't get Bruce Brown. Doesn't make sense. Though, obviously, Brown is still a very tremendous player. Great role player, 11.5 points per game, 5 rebounds, almost 3 assists, shooting 47% from the field and 33% from 3. Very similar numbers to Josh Hart. The Knicks don't need that. Enough said on that. But I'm really interested in the idea of PJ Washington. First of all, we've never talked about him on this channel, so it's a new one. It's always fun to talk about new names. And I think it is a very intriguing move for the Knicks. Obviously, we know that Randall's going to get reevaluated in around 3 weeks from now, so we'll see what happens with that. He'll probably be back a little bit after the All-Star break, but there's still a lack of depth, and we don't know how Julius Randle is going to be. There's always situations where you could dislocate something, and that's just going to keep popping out of place, which, aside from the fact, which is brutally painful, as I could personally vouch for, it also will prevent you from playing. I don't know if anyone here is a UFC fan, but there's this guy. His name is TJ Dillashaw. He was training for a championship fight. He dislocated his shoulder. He fought anyway, and his shoulder popped out multiple times during the fight. It was a really boring fight because the other guy, who was the reigning champion named Aljamain Sterling, just absolutely pounded the guy's face in, as the guy had one arm, so he was just on the bottom, getting destroyed. But obviously this is a basketball channel. I'm just trying to relate this to the only other shoulder dislocation that I know of, outside of Ja Morant, who obviously is missing the rest of the season because after his subluxation, he tore through his labrum. So we don't know fully when Julius will be 100%. There's a chance he's not going to be 100% for the rest of the season. Or there's a chance, like when Steph Curry did it, he just turned around and was fine. So you never know. Hopefully it's the latter, obviously. But the Knicks are going to need some depth at that position. Look, they don't have a lot of big guys on the roster as it is. Adding PJ Washington, who's 6'8", would be a huge help, especially because he can kind of stretch the floor. He's more of a power forward, but can also play a small ball 5 just fine. He did that for almost a full season with the Charlotte Hornets. So that can be an idea for the New York Knicks, and Washington has been one of the bright spots for the Charlotte Hornets in a really dark age for them. I mean, if you take a look right here, these have been his career numbers. For his career, he averages 13 points per game. Along with that, he's pulling down 5.5 rebounds. And then this season, he's averaging nearly 14 and 5, putting up solid numbers. Career 36% shooter from deep, though this season he is at his worst. Also, the Hornets are just a disaster this season, and Washington's coming off the bench more than ever because of the emergence of Mark Williams and also drafting Brandon Miller. And that's made Washington expendable. And I think that the New York Knicks could go after him, and I'm pretty much for it. I wouldn't want to give a first-round pick for PJ Washington. I don't think he's the type of player that would garner a first-rounder. But I would like to see the Knicks make some sort of move for Washington. I think he makes a ton of sense with this roster as a backup four, giving them size, giving them some options back there. And also, you can never really tell, like, what an injury is going to do to a player. We don't know when Randall's going to be at 100%, as I said. So having Washington as some insurance, as a guy you can sort of fit Randall's role, and I guess isn't an unsimilar player to Julius Randle, so you could kind of plug him in. Don't know if he'd be a starter with the Knicks until Randall gets back. Maybe he would be. Maybe he'd take Precious' spot, or maybe they'd just go small once OG Anunoby returns to the roster. I think that is probably more likely. But they could experiment and kind of do it depending on who they play. Now, if you guys take a look, the Knicks have shown legitimate interest in PJ Washington, as sources said. We've already been over that part. And the Raptors are seeking a first-round pick. Again, we know that, but it's clear that the Knicks are not willing to part with Grimes unless New York is trading him for a perceived upgrade, and they don't want to swap him for a different back of the rotation piece. Now, that kind of makes you think that, okay, the Knicks probably won't be trading Quentin Grimes at the deadline, and certainly not for a Bruce Brown or a PJ Washington. And because the asking price for DeJounte Murray was a little too high, that might not be happening either. So that leaves the Knicks in a scenario where they're probably not going to make some huge trade at the deadline, but they'll probably make some sort of trade. The biggest trade at the deadline, unless there's a shocker, is probably going to be DeJounte Murray getting moved. Where that is, I don't know. One can guess the Lakers, and that's probably your best bet. If you are a betting person and you can bet on a player's next team in your state, I would highly recommend doing that for DeJounte Murray. I think it's almost certain that he's going to end up on the Lakers. It just feels like it'll happen. But that's not the point of this video. The point of this video is the Knicks have a legit opportunity to get a big man who can hit threes if they don't want to go the Kelly Olynyk route. Because obviously, as we just posted yesterday, the Knicks do have interest in Jordan Clarkson and Kelly Olynyk. But say that price is too steep, which is a very real possibility with the Danny Ainge tax on the Knicks. You could get PJ Washington as a cheaper option. Is he as good of a shooter as Olynyk? No, not at all. But he is a big man who can hit threes, who can play the 4 or the 5. He's kind of a discount version in a way. I know they're not exactly similar. PJ does work within the arc way more. But you know what I mean. He's not a non-shooting big, and almost every big man the Knicks have, with the exception of Julius Randle, if you want to call him a big man, cannot shoot. It'll be nice to add someone who can hit their threes at a modest rate, if nothing else. I think that would be very, very helpful for the team. So I'm interested in that move. I think it depends on the price. So you're going to have to kind of gauge it off that. If you can work out some sort of Fournier trade with some seconds, then you obviously do that. But money's weird in the NBA. Don't exactly know what's going to happen, but it's probably not going to be for Grimes, and it's certainly not going to be for anyone else within the New York Knicks rotation, which makes things interesting. So I guess we'll see. And I'll see you guys on the next one, so make sure to like and subscribe to this channel and all that good stuff. Have a great day, and go Knicks.